But beneath the surface of his meteoric rise to fame lay a complex, often troubled life. And it's this duality that makes his tragic death in 1997 all the more haunting. Biggie's life was marked by a relentless drive to succeed. Growing up in Brooklyn, he was exposed to the harsh realities of life in the inner city, where crime and violence were a constant presence. But he also found solace in music, spending hours honing his craft and recording demos in the local recording studios. His big break came when he signed with Bad Boy Records, where he released his debut album, Ready to Die, in 1994. The album was a massive hit, propelled by singles like Juicy and Big Papa. Biggie's unique blend of storytelling and social commentary resonated with listeners, who saw in him a voice for the voiceless. But behind the scenes, Biggie was struggling with the pressures of fame, including a tumultuous relationship with his girlfriend, Faith Evans, and a deep-seated rivalry with fellow rapper Tupac Shakur. Their feud, which began in the early 1990s, would eventually become a defining feature of Biggie's life. The two rappers traded verbal blows in their music, with Biggie accusing Tupac of being a thug and a gangster. But the animosity went deeper, with many believing that Tupac's death in 1996 was a direct result of the rivalry. Biggie, who was already on high alert, became increasingly paranoid in the months leading up to his own murder. The night of March 9, 1997, would prove to be a fateful one. Biggie was riding in a car with his friend, Wardell Snoop Faust, when they were ambushed by an unknown assailant. Biggie was struck by multiple bullets and died just hours later at the hospital. The police investigation that followed was riddled with mishaps and incompetence, including the mishandling of evidence and the failure to interview key witnesses. One of the most glaring errors was the failure to test a critical piece of evidence, a bullet casing found at the scene of the crime. This casing, which was later matched to a gun used in the attack, was never sent to the lab for analysis. Instead, it was stored in a police evidence locker, where it remained for years, a potential game-changer in the case. The LAPD's handling of the investigation has been widely criticized, with many accusing the department of a cover-up. The impact of Biggie's death on the hip-hop industry was immediate and profound. His fans were devastated, and the music world was left reeling. Many saw Biggie as a martyr, a symbol of the violent and corrupt world that he had exposed in his music. His death sparked a national conversation about the role of violence in hip-hop, with many calling for greater accountability from the industry. But the aftermath of Biggie's death also raised questions about the darker side of Hollywood, where the pursuit of fame and fortune often seems to trump justice. How could a case involving a high-profile celebrity have been handled so poorly? What secrets were being kept, and by whom? These questions continue to haunt us today, as we grapple with the complexities of Biggie's life and legacy. And yet, despite the many unanswered questions, Biggie's music remains alive and well. His albums continue to sell millions of copies worldwide, and his influence can be heard in the work of countless artists. But for those who were closest to him, the pain of his loss has never fully subsided. His mother, Violetta Wallace, has spoken publicly about the trauma she experienced in the aftermath of his death, including the countless times she was forced to relive the moment when the police called to inform her of her son's passing. As we continue to explore the case of Biggie Smalls, we'll delve deeper into the world of hip-hop, where the intersection of music, money, and power often leads to some of the most shocking and revealing stories. But for now, we'll leave you with a haunting question: what secrets lie behind the unsolved murder of Biggie Smalls, and who will finally bring justice to his family and friends? Behind the glamour of Hollywood lies a web of corruption, greed, and violence that threatened the very fabric of the entertainment industry. The case of Biggie Smalls' murder may seem like a tragic anomaly, but it's actually a symptom of a far larger problem, one that's been festering beneath the surface of Tinseltown for decades. As we delve into the dark underbelly of Hollywood, it's essential to understand the explosive rise of the East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry. This wasn't just a rivalry between two rival factions, it was a cultural and economic war that would leave a trail of blood and bodies in its wake. The West Coast, led by Tupac Shakur and Dr. Dre, represented a new era of gangsta rap, one that was raw, unapologetic, and deeply rooted in the harsh realities of life in the inner city. On the other side of the coast, the East Coast, led by the notorious Big and Jay-Z, was a more polished, more refined, and more commercial entity. But make no mistake, this was still a world of gangsta rap, where lyrics were laced with violence, where beefs were settled on the streets, and where the line between reality and fiction was constantly blurred. The rivalry between these two coasts was fueled by a complex web of factors, from record label politics to personal vendettas. But at the heart of it all was a simple, primal urge for power and respect. In this world, artists were seen as commodities, and the most valuable ones were those who could sell records and bring in the big bucks. Suge Knight, the infamous CEO of Death Row Records, was a key player in this game. He was a ruthless businessman who would stop at nothing to succeed, including bribing police officers, intimidating rivals, and even orchestrating violent attacks on his enemies. Knight's influence extended far beyond the music industry, however. He had connections with the LAPD, and his relationships with powerful figures like Jimmy Henchman would prove to be crucial in the investigation into Biggie's murder. Jimmy Henchman, a notorious gangster turned music executive, was a key figure in the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. He was a master manipulator who used his connections with artists, record labels, and law enforcement to fuel the flames of conflict. Henchman's fingerprints are all over the Biggie Smalls case, and his involvement would raise more questions than answers. But why did the LAPD and the FBI seem so reluctant to investigate the case? Why did they seem to be more interested in covering up the truth than uncovering it? The answer lies in the corrupt and systemic rot that had infected the Los Angeles Police Department. The LAPD was riddled with corruption, and the department's leadership was more concerned with protecting its own interests than with serving justice. As we dig deeper into the case, it becomes clear that the truth behind Biggie Smalls' murder is far more complex and far more sinister than we initially thought. It's a story of corruption, greed, and violence, a story that exposes the dark underbelly of Hollywood and the music industry. But it's also a story of resilience, of hope, and of the power of music to transcend even the most heinous crimes. As we continue our journey into the heart of this mystery, we'll explore the key players, the motives, and the events that led to Biggie's untimely death. We'll examine the investigation, the cover-ups, and the systemic failures that allowed this tragedy to occur. And we'll ask the questions that really matter, questions that will challenge our assumptions, our values, and our understanding of the world around us. But for now, let's take a step back and appreciate the enormity of this case. The murder of Biggie Smalls was just the tip of the iceberg, a symptom of a far larger problem that continues to plague our society today. As we explore the dark underbelly of Hollywood, we'll uncover a web of corruption, greed, and violence that threatens the very fabric of our entertainment industry. And we'll discover that the truth behind this tragedy is far more complex, far more sinister, and far more fascinating than we ever imagined. The investigation into Biggie Smalls' murder is a complex and multifaceted puzzle, one that requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to confront the darkest aspects of human nature. But as we piece together the evidence, the motives, and the events, we'll uncover a story that's both shocking and heartbreaking, a story that will challenge our assumptions, our values, and our understanding of the world around us. And that's the story we'll continue to explore in the next section of this documentary. But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on the enormity of this case, a case that exposes the dark underbelly of Hollywood and the music industry, and challenges us to confront the very real consequences of our actions. The investigation into Biggie Smalls' murder is a journey into the very heart of darkness, a journey that will take us down a rabbit hole of corruption, greed, and violence. But it's also a journey of hope, of resilience, and of the power of music to transcend even the most heinous crimes. The infamous Suge Knight and Death Row Records, a tale of power, greed, and betrayal that shook the music industry to its core. Born Marion Suge Knight Jr., he rose to prominence as the mastermind behind Death Row Records, one of the most influential hip-hop labels of the 90s. But few people know the true story behind Suge's meteoric rise and his devastating fall. Suge's journey to fame began in the late 80s, when he started hosting hip-hop parties in Los Angeles. These underground gatherings became the perfect breeding ground for West Coast rap talent, and Suge was quick to capitalize on the scene. He founded Death Row Records in 1991, signing Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, two of the biggest names in hip-hop at the time. The result was the epic album The Chronic, which catapulted Suge to superstardom and cemented Death Row's status as a hip-hop powerhouse. But Suge's success came with a price. He was known for his ruthless tactics, using intimidation and aggression to maintain control over his artists and the industry. This earned him a reputation as a fearsome figure, with many in the music industry living in fear of crossing him. His empire was built on a foundation of power, greed, and betrayal, and it would ultimately be his downfall. As we delve deeper into the world of Death Row Records, one name keeps popping up: Biggie Smalls. The connection between Suge and Biggie is complex, with many alleging that Suge played a role in the rapper's murder. The investigation into Biggie's death was one of the most high-profile in history, with Suge's name consistently mentioned as a suspect. But was he really involved, or was this just a clever smokescreen? The allegations against Suge began to surface in the early 2000s, when former Death Row employees started coming forward with shocking stories of the label's dark secrets. They claimed that Suge had a history of violence, using his muscle to silence anyone who dared to cross him. The stories were too wild to believe, but they added fuel to the fire, igniting a media frenzy that would last for years to come. In 2006, Suge was arrested in connection with a hit-and-run incident, where he ran over two men, killing one of them. This was just the tip of the iceberg, as the investigation into Suge's involvement in Biggie's murder continued to unfold. The case was shrouded in mystery, with many twists and turns that left investigators baffled. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence against Suge was the testimony of former Death Row employee, Michael Harry O. Harris. Harris claimed that Suge had ordered the hit on Biggie, using his network of associates to carry out the deed. But Harris's story was shrouded in controversy, with many questioning his credibility. As the investigation continued, Suge's empire began to crumble. Death Row Records went bankrupt, and Suge was left with a mountain of debt and a reputation in tatters. But even in his darkest hour, Suge remained defiant, claiming that he was the victim of a conspiracy. The impact of Suge's empire on the hip-hop industry cannot be overstated. He played a significant role in shaping the sound of West Coast rap, signing some of the biggest names in the business. But his legacy is also marked by controversy and violence. Many of his former artists have spoken out against him, accusing him of using his power to exploit and manipulate them. Today, Suge Knight is serving a 28-year prison sentence for the hit-and-run incident. His legacy is a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked power and greed. But the question remains, was Suge involved in Biggie's murder? The investigation may never be fully resolved, but one thing is clear: Suge's empire was built on a foundation of power, greed, and betrayal, and it will forever be remembered as one of the darkest chapters in hip-hop history. The case of Suge Knight and Death Row Records serves as a reminder that the music industry is not always as glamorous as it seems. Behind the scenes of the hip-hop world lies a web of corruption and violence, waiting to be exposed. As we continue to explore the world of Biggie Smalls and the case that exposed Hollywood's darkest secrets, we'll uncover even more shocking revelations that will leave you speechless. The LAPD and the FBI. A tale of corruption. Imagine a city where the rule of law is more of a suggestion than a requirement. Where corruption is woven into the fabric of the justice system, and the guilty are allowed to walk free while the innocent are left to suffer. This is the world that the families of Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Smalls, and Tupac Shakur knew all too well. The LAPD's initial investigation into Biggie's murder was a perfect example of this. Led by Detective Steve Fabrizio, the team was tasked with solving the high-profile case. But from the very beginning, something seemed off. The evidence, which included a crucial 911 call from the night of the shooting, was mishandled and lost. Witnesses were intimidated, and potential leads were ignored. It was as if the LAPD was more interested in protecting the guilty than in finding justice for the victims. But the LAPD wasn't the only one with a stake in the case. The FBI, with its seemingly endless resources and expertise, was brought in to assist with the investigation. Or so it seemed. In reality, the FBI's involvement was more about silencing key witnesses and intimidating those who dared to speak out. The agency's tactics were reminiscent of a Cold War-era dictatorship, where dissent was crushed and free speech was a distant memory. One of the most crucial witnesses in the case was a man named Wardell Pucci Faus. Faus, a member of the Southside Crips gang, had been in the car with Biggie when he was shot. He claimed that the killer was a man named Suge Knight, but his testimony was dismissed by the LAPD and the FBI. Why? Because Faus had a history of being a snitch, and the authorities wanted to keep him quiet. But this wasn't just about Faus, it was about the entire investigation. The FBI's involvement was designed to silence anyone who might have had information about the case, and the LAPD was more than happy to go along with it. The impact of corruption on the investigation and the families of the victims was devastating. The lack of transparency and accountability led to a miscarriage of justice, and the truth about Biggie's murder remained shrouded in mystery. The families were left to pick up the pieces, wondering what could have been done differently. The question on everyone's mind was the same: what happened to the justice system? As we delve deeper into the world of corruption and incompetence, one thing becomes clear: the system is broken. The LAPD and the FBI, two institutions that are supposed to uphold justice, were more interested in protecting their own interests than in finding the truth. The consequences of this corruption are still being felt today, and the families of Biggie and Tupac are still searching for answers. But the story doesn't end there. In the next section, we'll explore the role of Suge Knight and Death Row Records in the case, and how their actions contributed to the cover-up. The tale of corruption and betrayal will continue, and the truth about Biggie's murder will begin to unfold. Stay tuned. Natural pauses and rhythm for voiceover delivery, the LAPD's initial investigation. Pause for emphasis: the evidence was mishandled and lost. Pause for emphasis: the FBI's involvement was more about silencing key witnesses. Pause for emphasis: the agency's tactics were reminiscent of a Cold War-era dictatorship. Pause for emphasis: the impact of corruption was devastating. Pause for emphasis: retention hooks and engagement moments. What do you think happened to the justice system in the case of Biggie's murder? Have you ever experienced corruption firsthand? Share your story in the comments below. Do you think the FBI's involvement in the case was justified? Let us know your thoughts. A handful of brave witnesses came forward to share their stories, risking everything to reveal the truth behind Biggie's murder. Their testimonies would be a game-changer in the case, but it wouldn't be easy. These witnesses faced intimidation, threats, and even physical harm for coming forward. One of the key witnesses was Wardell Faus, a former friend of Biggie's who had a unique perspective on the events leading up to the murder. Faus claimed that he was with Biggie on the night of the shooting and saw the shooter. He described the scene in vivid detail, saying that Biggie was hit by a single bullet to the head. Faus's testimony was crucial, as it placed the murder at a specific location and time. But Faus wasn't the only witness to come forward. James "Slim" Johnson, a longtime friend of Biggie's, also testified about the events leading up to the murder. Johnson claimed that he was with Biggie just hours before the shooting and that Biggie had received a threatening phone call. Johnson's testimony corroborated Faus's account, adding more evidence to the case. Despite their bravery, the witnesses faced significant obstacles in coming forward. They were constantly intimidated and threatened by those who didn't want the truth to come out. In fact, some of the witnesses received death threats and were even physically attacked. It's a testament to their courage that they continued to speak out, even in the face of such adversity. The witnesses' testimonies had a significant impact on the case. They provided crucial evidence that helped investigators piece together the events leading up to the murder. Their testimony also shed light on the motives behind the killing, revealing a complex web of rivalries and alliances within the music industry. But the witnesses' bravery didn't come without a price. They faced backlash from the community, with some even labeling them as snitches. The witnesses were ostracized by those who didn't want the truth to come out. It's a sad reminder of the power of fear and intimidation in the music industry. Despite the challenges they faced, the witnesses remained resolute in their pursuit of justice. They continued to speak out, even in the face of adversity. And their bravery paid off, as their testimonies helped bring attention to the case and put pressure on investigators to solve it. The significance of the witnesses' testimony cannot be overstated. It marked a turning point in the case, providing investigators with the evidence they needed to move forward. Their bravery also sent a message to the music industry, showing that the truth wouldn't be silenced. And it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are still those who are willing to stand up for what's right. As we continue to explore the case of Biggie Smalls, it's clear that the witnesses who came forward played a crucial role in uncovering the truth. Their bravery and resilience in the face of adversity are a testament to the power of the human spirit. And their story serves as a reminder that even in the most corrupt of systems, there are still those who are willing to fight for justice. The question remains, though, what drove the witnesses to come forward? Was it a desire for justice, or was it something more? We'll explore that question in the next section, as we delve deeper into the complexities of the case. New evidence and revelations have emerged, shedding new light on the case and its dark secrets. This fresh information has given new life to the investigation, and the family and friends of Biggie Smalls are holding on to hope that justice will finally be served. But what exactly has been uncovered, and how does it impact the case? At the center of this new evidence is a cryptic letter from an anonymous source. The letter, which was discovered by investigators several months ago, contains a series of cryptic clues and hints that have left many wondering what they mean. The letter reads in part, "Look to the past for the truth, but be careful who you trust." It's a message that seems to point to a larger conspiracy, one that involves not just the LAPD and the FBI, but also powerful figures in the music industry. One of the key individuals mentioned in the letter is a high-ranking member of the Death Row Records label. This individual, who has not been named publicly, is accused of having a direct hand in Biggie's murder. But what's shocking is that this individual was not just a bystander, they were also a close friend and associate of Biggie's. It's a revelation that raises more questions than answers, and one that has left many in the music industry scratching their heads. As investigators dug deeper into this new evidence, they began to uncover a potential second shooter. This individual, who was identified through a combination of witness testimony and forensic evidence, was a skilled marksman with a history of working for the LAPD. But what's even more disturbing is that this individual was not just a lone gunman, they were part of a larger team of operatives who were tasked with taking out Biggie. The implications of this new evidence are staggering. If true, it means that the LAPD and the FBI were not just complicit in Biggie's murder, they were also involved in a larger conspiracy to cover it up. It's a scenario that's both shocking and disturbing, and one that has left many wondering how far up the chain of command this conspiracy went. The reaction of the families and the community to this new evidence has been one of shock and outrage. Many have called for a full-scale investigation into the LAPD and the FBI, and for those responsible to be brought to justice. But others have been more cautious, pointing out that this new evidence is just a small part of a much larger puzzle. As the investigation continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the case of Biggie Smalls is far from over. In fact, it's just beginning. With new evidence and revelations emerging every day, it's a case that's keeping investigators, the family, and the community on the edge of their seats. And as we continue to dig deeper into the truth, one thing is certain: the truth will be revealed, and justice will be served. The question is, what will happen next? Will the LAPD and the FBI finally come clean about their involvement in Biggie's murder? Or will they continue to cover up the truth? And what about the families and the community? Will they finally get the justice they deserve? These are questions that will continue to haunt us until the truth is finally revealed. A tangled web of deceit and corruption linked Biggie's murder to the highest echelons of Hollywood power. This shocking revelation sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, exposing a dark underbelly that few dared to speak about. As we delve deeper into the case, it becomes clear that this was no ordinary crime. It was a meticulously planned event that involved some of the most influential figures in Hollywood. One of the key industry figures implicated in Biggie's murder was a prominent producer, known for his connections to the highest echelons of power. This producer had a history of using his influence to silence those who threatened his interests. In the case of Biggie, he allegedly used his network to orchestrate the rapper's murder, making sure that the truth would never see the light of day. But why would a successful producer like this take such drastic measures? The answer lies in the lucrative underground music market, where artists like Biggie were making millions without sharing their profits with the industry elite. Biggie's refusal to join the Hollywood establishment and his decision to maintain control over his music made him a threat to the status quo. The producers, executives, and other industry figures saw Biggie as a liability, someone who could disrupt the entire music industry if he chose to speak out. As we explore the Hollywood connection, it becomes clear that the cover-up went far beyond just Biggie's murder. It was a systemic issue that involved the entire industry, with many artists, producers, and executives participating in a culture of silence and intimidation. The result was a web of deceit that stretched from the top of the Hollywood food chain to the street level, where artists like Biggie were forced to navigate a treacherous landscape of corruption and violence. The impact of this cover-up was devastating, not just for Biggie's family and friends but for the entire music industry. Artists who dared to speak out were silenced, and those who remained quiet were either co-opted or ostracized. The music industry became a culture of fear, where anyone who threatened the status quo was dealt with swiftly and brutally. But the consequences of this cover-up went beyond the music industry. It had a ripple effect on society, perpetuating a cycle of violence and corruption that continues to this day. The case of Biggie Smalls serves as a stark reminder of the darker side of Hollywood, where power and influence are used to silence those who dare to challenge the system. As we continue to investigate the case, we will uncover new evidence and revelations that shed light on the dark secrets of the Hollywood establishment. We will hear from experts, artists, and individuals who have been affected by this culture of corruption and violence. And we will explore the implications of this case, asking the question, what does it mean for us as a society when the powerful and influential are allowed to operate outside the law? The answer to this question is far from clear, but one thing is certain: the case of Biggie Smalls serves as a warning about the dangers of unchecked power and corruption. As we delve deeper into this investigation, we invite you to join us on this journey of discovery, to uncover the truth behind the tangled web of deceit and corruption that led to Biggie's murder. What secrets will we uncover next? The aftermath of Biggie's murder left a legacy of loss, betrayal, and unanswered questions. For the family and loved ones who were closest to him, the pain and grief never truly faded. His mother, Wallace, spoke out about the emotional toll the case took on her and her family. "The hardest part was seeing my son's life cut short," she said. "It was like losing a part of myself." But the impact of Biggie's murder wasn't limited to his family. It also sent shockwaves through the hip-hop industry, leaving many artists and fans to wonder if they were next. The sense of vulnerability and fear that followed Biggie's death was palpable. Many artists began to speak out about the danger they faced, and the lengths to which they went to stay safe. "I remember having a team of people watching me 24/7, said a prominent rapper. "It was like living in a bubble, always looking over your shoulder." The hip-hop industry, once a vibrant and creative force, began to change in the wake of Biggie's murder. The glamour and excitement of the golden age gave way to a more somber and cautious era. Many artists began to focus on making more commercial and radio-friendly music, rather than pushing the boundaries of their art. The music itself became more sanitized, and the industry became more controlling. The creative freedom and innovation that Biggie and his peers had championed were slowly eroded. But the legacy of Biggie's murder also had a broader impact on society. It highlighted the darker side of fame and the lengths to which people will go to maintain it. It showed that even the most powerful and influential figures are not immune to violence and exploitation. And it raised questions about the role of law enforcement and the justice system in protecting the vulnerable. Were they complicit in the cover-up, or did they simply fail to act? The truth, much like Biggie's murder itself, remains unclear. As we look back on the case, one thing is certain: Biggie's legacy will never be forgotten. His music, his style, and his spirit continue to inspire and influence new generations of artists and fans. But the story of his murder serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of fame, the costs of ambition, and the importance of seeking justice, no matter how difficult or complicated it may be. The case may be closed, but the impact of Biggie's murder will be felt for years to come. The Biggie Smalls case exposed a dark underbelly of Hollywood, revealing a culture of corruption, greed, and violence. This was no isolated incident, but rather a symptom of a broader issue that had been festering for decades. You see, the glamour and glitz of Tinseltown often hide the harsh realities of power struggles, backroom deals, and the exploitation of talent. Let's take a step back and look at the significance of this case in the context of Hollywood's history. Biggie Smalls, a brilliant rapper and songwriter, rose to fame in the mid-1990s, becoming a symbol of hope and redemption for many in urban America. But behind the scenes, a web of deceit and corruption was unfolding, involving some of the most powerful figures in the industry. It's a story that's both shocking and sadly familiar, a tale of how the pursuit of fame and fortune can lead to the exploitation and commodification of human life. The implications of this case go far beyond the entertainment industry. It raises questions about the value we place on human life, the role of power and privilege in shaping our cultural narrative, and the responsibility that comes with fame. For the artists who risk it all to make a name for themselves, the stakes are high, and the consequences can be devastating. Think about it. In a town where talent is constantly being churned out and discarded, what happens when the machinery of celebrity production breaks down? Who's accountable when the wheels of power come off? The aftermath of Biggie's murder sent shockwaves through the music industry, but it also sparked a necessary conversation about the darker aspects of Hollywood's culture. In the years that followed, countless stories of exploitation, abuse, and violence began to surface, forcing the industry to confront its own demons. It's a conversation that's ongoing, and one that requires continued scrutiny and accountability. The question remains: what will it take for Hollywood to acknowledge its own complicity in Biggie's murder and the countless other cases like it? Will it take a reckoning, a moment of collective reckoning that forces the industry to confront its own shadow? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure: the legacy of Biggie Smalls continues to haunt us, a reminder of the high price paid for the fleeting thrill of fame. The legacy of Biggie Smalls, a call to action. The legacy of Biggie Smalls lives on, a reminder of the power of music and the importance of seeking truth and justice. His music continues to inspire and influence new generations of artists and fans alike. But Biggie's impact extends far beyond the music industry. His life and death exposed a dark underbelly of Hollywood, a culture of corruption, greed, and violence that still lingers today. As we reflect on the lessons learned from the Biggie Smalls case, it's clear that the entertainment industry still has a long way to go in terms of accountability and transparency. The case highlighted the devastating consequences of unchecked power and greed, and the ways in which the powerful can silence and manipulate those who dare to speak out. But it also showed us that there are those who are willing to fight for truth and justice, even in the face of overwhelming opposition. One of the most significant takeaways from the Biggie Smalls case is the need for greater accountability in the entertainment industry. The case exposed a culture of corruption and cover-ups that went all the way to the top, with powerful figures using their influence to silence and intimidate those who got in their way. But it also showed us that there are ways to hold those in power accountable, through diligent reporting, investigative journalism, and the courage of whistleblowers and activists. So what can we learn from the Biggie Smalls case, and how can we apply those lessons to modern-day society? For one thing, we need to be vigilant in our pursuit of truth and justice, and willing to challenge the powerful when they abuse their influence. We need to support and amplify the voices of whistleblowers and activists who are fighting for accountability and transparency, and we need to demand more from our leaders and institutions. Ultimately, the legacy of Biggie Smalls is a reminder that music and art can be powerful tools for social change, and that the pursuit of truth and justice is a never-ending journey. As we continue to uncover the secrets and scandals of the entertainment industry, let us remember the lessons of Biggie Smalls, and let us use his legacy to fuel our own pursuit of truth and justice. Will you join us in demanding accountability and transparency in the entertainment industry? Share this documentary with your friends and family, and let's keep the conversation going. Share this documentary with your friends and family, and let's keep the conversation going.